Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling some fantasy football today.
I thought you were going to say I'm feeling 22.
Yeah, dude, that's what popped into my head, and I was not
I got nervous.
interested in saying that. Who sang that song? I don't even remember.
Is it bad to say that I think it's Taylor Swift?
Yeah, it's probably Taylor Swift.
I hope I'm wrong.
My wife, God love her, loves Taylor Swift. I don't have anything against you, Tay-Tay. Nothing. It is Tuesday, May 12th. People came here for fantasy football and got Taylor Swift right off the bat. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me. We got a lot to get to in this episode. We're going to start off with the news, and then we're going to jump into our must-draft running backs in 2020. These are guys that are people that we think you should definitely have on your team when the season begins, or at some point in the season. So we'll discuss those. Before we do that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on our personal, with the handles or somewhere on the screen. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs, Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. Subscribe wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Click the bell on YouTube for notifications, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. Let's jump into the 4 pieces of news that we have really quickly, and then we'll get to the main. What do you want to call it?
I get so excited when there's not a ton of news.
We get time to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
NFL Network's Ian Rappaport says Cam Newton is willing to consider being a backup this season.
Do you really believe that?
I don't know. I don't think Cam Newton is much as a dink as people think he is. I mean, he dresses like an idiot, but
sometimes he does.
Sometimes he's really good at football. I don't know what
I think
doing.
I think I believe that support. I think he's willing to take a Winston-like deal if he has to, like maybe with the Steelers.
Right.
Or, whatever team it ends up being. That he can sit behind for a year or at least compete for the job, but probably won't get it. And then next year kind of be his year.
I say this as a reminder to the Fantasy Champions community. Please do not have Cam Newton on your fantasy team when the season starts. If he's a backup.
Yeah.
Not worth it. Some people are going to draft him. It's going to happen. The Bengals director of personnel, he said that he's, I think his name is Duke Tobin, said that they visited about Joe Mixon having a long-term deal. So that sounds like it's going to be something that happens. That's a 2021. He's still got one more year left in his contract, I believe. So that might be a 2021 contract holdout that you have to watch for. Oh, gosh. Of course. Which sucks. Usual. But anyway, Ian, what was I going to say? NFL Insider. I was going to say Ian Rappaport because it's just force of habit. NFL Insider Adam Caplan reports that the Eagles have some interest in Carlos Hyde. I don't want to spend time on this because we will talk about that particular rumor on the show. But yeah, Carlos Hyde has talked with the Eagles, or they have interest in him, or whatever. And then, I know. Nick Sirianni from the Colts is the offensive coordinator. He said that the RB room is a 1-1 punch with Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. So, as I said, long-term Jonathan Taylor, Dynasty Leagues, sexy little pick. Short-term, I think this is what may happen here. Okay? Follow me. You're going to see Mack start the season with a lot of workload, and then as the season progresses, Jonathan Taylor will get more and more work. So he could be a back half, weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, if you play championships in week 17. He could be a guy that plays well in the second half of the season as Marlon Mack starts to get faded out, or Marlon Mack gets hurt altogether. So I think there's going to be a little tiny window where you let somebody else draft Jonathan Taylor, get burned by him, and then swoop in for the small deal. But I would say don't draft him at this point.
I wouldn't draft. I mean, if you got an extra bench spot,
it would be worth it. But like he's gonna end up being like an 8th round pick.
Gosh,
is it even worth it?
Do not draft him if he's an 8th round pick. if he's like a 14th or 15th round pick.
Yeah, I take him and just
13th round pick.
slide him on the bench for the whole season until he actually plays well. He could. I see a lot of similarities to the Colts in the Colts situation to the Eagles last year, where you had Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders, as the season went along, started to get better and better and better, and started getting more work, and Howard got hurt, and so that could be that could be what happens in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor, but it's going to take the season to do that. And I feel like it's worth, last year I drafted, Mark Ingram. He ended up being good the whole season, but my goal was to draft him knowing that he was going to be good for like 4 weeks because of the easy schedule at the beginning of the season, then trade him away. This is the reverse of that scenario. You let somebody else draft Jonathan Taylor, hope that he blows in the first month of the season, and then swoop in for a small deal, or even watch him hit the waiver wire, unless he's a 14th or 15th round pick. So those are my thoughts on Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. Like, I think Taylor's somebody who you can definitely keep your eye on. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't want to draft him if he's going in the 8th round.
Right.
But if he's falling late and you want to just put him on your bench for half the season, I think that's a good idea.
Almost knocked the entire desk over.
That would be bad.
Yeah.
I do think he's more talented than Marlon Mack, so I think eventually he'll get more work than him. So we'll see how the season plays out. But as of right now, I'm not trying to touch him in the first 8 rounds.
Yeah. So let's move into our must-draft running backs for 2020. As a prerequisite to this discussion, we did not include the obvious Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott's of the world.
You gotta draft Dalvin Cook if he's available.
Gotta have to. Anybody that's getting ranked in the top 5 right now in terms of running backs are must drafts. Anyway,
right.
But I think these are guys that we're talking about between rounds 2, 3, and 15. So this is anybody outside of your normal top 6 or 7 at the running back position. There are guys that made the list, guys that didn't make the list. It doesn't necessarily mean we dislike guys like Derrick Henry who aren't on this list. It doesn't mean we hate them. It doesn't mean not draft them. But this is just guys that we think you should have on your fantasy team at some point in 2020. So let's start off with the number 1 guy. I think this is probably both of our favorite running back going into 2020, and it's Kenyan Drake. Can I say I was right on my original take last year? I said he was going to be an RB1.
Yes, kind of.
But now he's like a sleeper.
He was in an awful situation.
Yeah.
Like worse than you even thought at the time.
So
but yeah, sure, you like the player, so.
Kenyan Drake, I guess, tops our must-draft running backs list. And there's a few reasons why he is in that position. I just want to start off by saying that his ADP, you said his ADP is now in the 2nd round. Can you give me the Fantasy Pros average? Because I have 49 on Sleeper.
That's not his ADP. What it is it's just his consensus rankings.
Oh, okay. All right. Got you.
It's 17th overall.
He's 10th now or 9th?
He's the 10th ranked running back.
Oh, gosh. So that would be a 2nd round pick.
He's ahead of Aaron Jones. Right
now, the ADP hasn't caught up.
No. To sleeper, I could get him in the 5th or 6th round.
Right. As a little preview, we are going to do consistent episodes called ADP Analysis in the next couple months to go over what the ADP of players look like as the off season and as draft season progresses, to see if guys are going up, down, where they're staying, where they're going, project where they might go. So we'll have that for you soon. But I did notice that Kenyan Drake's ADP and ranking on Fantasy Pros did not line up. But so right now his ADP is at 48. Last year, he was traded to the Arizona Cardinals. Do you want to know what the numbers were between weeks 9 and 17 when he started for the Arizona Cardinals?
What were the numbers?
He had, I think, 160 fantasy points, and he was the RB4 in fantasy, all the fantasy.
Wow.
Yeah, he was absolutely absurd. The Cardinals didn't really do anything this offseason to make us think that he's not going to be the feature back in that offense. They improved the offense. They traded
away David Johnson, so if anything,
right. It's Kenyan Drake's role. So They improved the offensive line. They improved the offense as a whole with DeAndre Hopkins. So that offense is looking much better than it did last year.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that or disagree?
I would agree with that for sure.
All right. I always talk about the fantasy point per opportunity totals. He had a 1 fantasy point per opportunity in his previous seasons with the Dolphins. This year, with more opportunity, he had a 0.9 fantasy point per opportunity, which is right in the ballpark of where a 1 CMC lands. And I think Zeke is right around there as well, and Barkley. So he's got that same fantasy point per opportunity total as those guys. So he has really great efficiency, but the other question is, does he have the opportunity to do it? And he averaged 19 touches a game over that course of time after he was traded to the Cardinals. He's poised for a breakout this year. I think the numbers speak for themselves on Kenyan Drake.
Yeah.
I mean, if he gets 19 touches a game and he has a 0.9 fantasy point per opportunity, he's going to score like in half PPR 18 fantasy points a game.
Yeah. Let's look at David Johnson last year.
Right.
He was not very good, right? Running the football, he was not good.
Right.
But he was still getting fantasy production. He was getting 15 to 20 points a week in half PPR because of how good that offense is and how good or how many opportunities it opens up for the running back.
Right.
And Kenyan Drake is going to be the guy in that offense. He's going to be the workhorse. And they, like you said, they added DeAndre Hopkins. They drafted Josh Jones in the 3rd round, who was an absolute steal. He was projected late first, early second round pick, and he's going to help with that offensive line. Like to me, I mean, there's talks. I wouldn't go this far, but there are talks that are saying like Kyler Murray for MVP this year.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Floral.
I've heard that. I've heard like Arizona Cardinals are like the Rams from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That went to the Super Bowl, like the high powered offense.
Oh boy.
At least the first half of the year. But yeah, but I wouldn't go as far as say as that. I think there's still work to do as a team. But when it comes to Kenyan Drake, like as long as that man plays and he plays the way he did at the end of last year, he's going to be a top 10 running back, definitely for sure. And I think there's a chance he can finish in the top 5. If he plays like he did last year for the whole season, I think he will be a top 5 running back.
He's exactly what I think the Cardinals were looking for at running back. I think David Johnson's this injury prone old man that's on a big contract. He's not really old. I'll take that back. He's not that. He's for a running back. He's generally old. But anyway, I guess they the same age. I don't even want to.
I can look it up. I think David Johnson's a little older, but it's not like a big difference.
Yeah. So anyway, I think Kenyan Drake was just less money, and that's why they moved on from him. But he fits the offense perfectly. He had those 170 carries last year, and he also had 68 total targets, and he had 50 receptions. So, and I'm curious to know how many of those friggin' receptions happened while he was on the Arizona Cardinals. Because he was averaging a right around, like, I want to say 2 targets a game with Miami, 2 to 3. It might be 3 to 4.
It wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot.
The second he got to Arizona, it was 4, 6, 6, 2, 3, 1, 3, 3. So he gets 4 or 5 targets a game with the Arizona Cardinals. There was a stretch of games in week 16 and 17, and week 15 and 16, and may have won a couple of people some fantasy titles. It certainly didn't win me anything, but I had him on my bench, but he had 39 fantasy points in week 15 against Cleveland. He had 23 touches in that game, and he only had 1 target. So,
oh my gosh,
22 rushing attempts, 7 red zone attempts. The following week, he had 24 rushing attempts, 4 targets, 3 receptions. And he ended that game with 33 fantasy points. So, Kenyan Drake, man, he's a stud.
Yeah, he's a beast, and he's 2 years younger than David Johnson.
Oh, he
David
is.
Johnson's 28.
Holy smokes, David Johnson is really old for a running back.
Yeah, well, I mean,
he's 2 years older than me, so
28 is pushing it for running back, and then you add the injuries to it as well. He might have 1 good year left.
Right. So I think a lot of things point in the direction of Kenyan Drake being this RB1 of sorts. And I think a lot of people, I mean, if this holds, I think he's going to be a 3rd round pick. That's where I'm kind of landing on him.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be a 3rd round pick.
If this holds and he ends up being a 5th round pick, I mean, this is a highway robbery.
Oh gosh, if you can get Kenyan Drake in the 5th round, like that is an absolute steal. He won't be going in the 5th round. Howard draft. One of us would take him like a little earlier, like in the 4th or the 3rd. Even.
I'm just feeling very certain, and I don't know if I should or not, about Kenyan Drake being an RB1. Like it's almost a lock.
I think I wouldn't say a lock because I don't think anything in fantasy football.
No, that's why I said it's almost. Everything's almost.
But yeah, no, I think you should feel very confident about that. Him being like at least a low end RB1. I think that's very possible as long as he just plays the way he has been the last year.
Yeah, and
continues to get the opportunities, which he will. I think, bearing injury, he's gonna do very well.
Yeah, I mean, just for this season, you know what I mean. If you're in a dynasty league right now, and you want to win, this would be a perfect. I mean, the Drake owners probably thinking very highly of him right now. But
as they should.
This might be the time where you can swoop in, make a deal, and get yourself an RB1 to prepare you for the season. And then if you're, obviously in redraft, I mean, like we were talking about, 4th, 5th round pick for a guy like Kenyan Drake, who very well might be an RB1. It's not unfeasible to make that decision and be like, yeah, I'm going to draft him, because like people are going to be Drake haters. They're going to be like, oh, I don't think he's going to be that good. And they can take a flying leap, but I'm going to have Kenyan Drake on all of my fantasy teams if I can make it happen. Number 2, Miles Sanders. He is probably, if Drake was our number 1 must-have running back, Miles Sanders is probably our second favorite running back this season. His ADP right now is more leveled off than Drake's. I think he's picked 27 right now, according to Sleeper. So that's right around a 3rd round pick, I want to say.
Yeah.
I think that's a 3rd round and 12 team as well. Yep. But so he's basically a 3rd round pick. That's a little more than I'm comfortable spending on Miles Sanders. I'll say that. But I will not rule out a 3rd round selection on Miles Sanders. I might not even rule out a 2nd round selection on Miles Sanders. But I think it's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable for me with how high he's going. Howard, when he went down, Jordan Howard, when he went down, he was through weeks 10 through 17, Miles Sanders was the RB7, which is, RB1 status right there. Howard's gone. No more Howard. He's bye-byes. Not on the team anymore. Their offensive line's still good. They still got Carson Wentz. They added some spots to the wide receiver. So the offense is relatively decent. Like I said, the O-line's good. And he's also one of those guys, same as Kenyan Drake, 0.9 fantasy points per opportunity. The one concern that I have with Miles Sanders right now is that Carlos Hyde grossness, that Carlos Hyde rumor we talked about in the news.
Yeah, I mean, if they add Carlos Hyde, I think it wouldn't be good. No. But I don't think Carlos Hyde makes a big enough difference where it's like, I'm not drafting Miles Sanders anymore, because I don't think they're going to use Carlos Hyde a lot. I don't think he's going to be, if they sign him, it's going to be like, he's not going to get a lot of carries.
Yeah, that was the one thing I wanted to highlight more specifically in this show, because we talked about Miles Sanders and how good we think he's going to be. And I think, like I said, I just ran off numbers. I mean, this season, Miles Sanders, there is a really, really good chance that Miles Sanders gets the one thing that he didn't have last season because of Jordan Howard was opportunity in the red zone. And there were plays that I watched him on film, and he just looks insanely good. He had several early in the season when they first rolled him out there and had him, run 10 times. There were just a couple of plays where they handed it off to him, and he was one defender away from breaking a 30-yard touchdown run. There was a couple of plays where he ran it for like 50, 60 yards, and it got called back on a holding. And it's like there were just a couple of plays where you saw the explosiveness of Miles Sanders. I like Kenyan Drake because of his efficiency. I like Miles Sanders purely because of his talent. You know what I mean? Like, he's that good, but the reason why I want to talk about the Carlos Hyde situation is because there are people out there in the fantasy community right now who don't like Miles Sanders. And it perplexes me a little bit. And I'm like, why? If they go out and they sign a, Devonta Freeman or a Lamar Miller, I'm concerned. I'm like, okay, Miles Sanders not going to be. If they go out and they sign a Carlos Hyde, why are people scared of that? Like, it's like your second running back is Boston Scott. You should probably add some depth at running back. So sign Carlos Hyde. It's not we signed Devonta Freeman, who was a starting running back last year, to pair with Miles Sanders. Like, I just think that Carlos Hyde is just a backup running back. At best, he's a third down back.
Yeah,
and
gosh.
He's not going to take anything from Miles Sanders.
No, I don't think he will. He will either.
The good part about it, and this, I'm sorry, I will let you talk because I'm rambling.
No, it's okay. I think the only thing I think Hyde could take away is maybe some
red zone
and shorts,
right?
Maybe some red zone,
right?
But even then, I don't think it'll be enough where it really affects Sanders.
Yeah, I got my fantasy football. I think it's from NFL.com. League Commissioner Cup. My wife got this for me. I was very happy.
Wow.
I feel like a legend. Being a league commissioner is not an easy thing to do. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no.
People hate me.
I wonder why.
I get called. My nickname is Roger Goodell. That's not a good sign.
No. A well-earned nickname as well.
Yeah. So anyway, so for me, I think the biggest thing with the Carlos Hyde situation, the thing I was going to note, is that I think there's a real justifiable opportunity that he will steal those red zone carries away from Miles Sanders. Some of them, not all of them, but I just think the fact that they want to bring in, Carlos Hyde as opposed to the other two running backs on the market, it kind of shows me that Miles Sanders is there. A lot of people are bringing up the fact that the Eagles always like to use RBBCs. But we saw Miles Sanders have RB2 success last year with a backup role. So it's like with a starting role, what can he do? You know what I mean? And I have a feeling that Miles Sanders is going to have a very, very good season. But Carlos Hyde's not even on the Eagles. So, I mean, so there's there's nothing to be worried about yet. The interesting thing is that people like to take, and I learned this last year, is that you got to take rumors with a grain of salt. Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not true. And until Carlos Hyde signs with the Eagles, Miles Sanders is a very, very high likelihood RB1. And I like him as that, and that's why I draft him in the second round and in the third round, because he's talented, he's fast, he can be a workhorse, he can be there on 3 downs. He's got all of the all the measurables and the pass catching capabilities to make him that. So Miles Sanders, he's not a lock, but as far as a guy that you can get outside of the top, maybe the top 10 of running backs, is perfect. And with this Carlos Hyde stuff bringing Miles Sanders' value down, we might be able to see him fall into the 3rd or 4th round, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. That would be awesome.
Get Drake in the 5th round, Miles Sanders in the 3rd round.
Yeah, that's a recipe of winning a league right there.
Ideal. Get your RB1 in the 1st. I don't know. I like it. The third guy on our list, I'm not sure how you feel about Austin Eckler, and I didn't know how I felt about Austin Eckler until today, really. I think Eckler is kind of a polarizing character because he's not the normal, what is he like? He's got 5'10", I believe. I can't remember his height.
Yeah, he's not.
And he's 199 pounds, and he's just not a big running back. He runs like one sometimes, but he's more of a speed guy. He's 5'9", 199 pounds, so he's not a big running back by any means, but he's an excellent pass catcher. Right. And I started looking over him, and I'm like, Should I like him? When he started over the stretch without Melvin Gordon, those 4 games, he was averaging 3.9 yards a carry, which is kind of gross, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Not exciting at all. And I prorated his whole season. And he had 228 rushing attempts. And he had 888 yards. That's a little bit gross. You have 200 plus rushing attempts, you should probably have 1,000 yards. So that was a little bit gross to me. But the thing that I like about Austin Eckler is that over the time that he was a starter, he was a top 3 running back in fantasy football. Now, I don't think he can hold that top 3 status over the course of a whole season. But if he gets 200 plus rushing attempts, and last year he had 108 targets, right? So last year, just to give you some of the numbers, he had 138 rushing attempts and 108 targets. And I think he came down with like 90 catches or something like that.
Yeah, 92 catches.
92 catches. So he had basically, if you want to take the targets, he had 308 opportunities to do something. And so if he's a full-time starter this year and there's no one behind him, like I could see the Chargers going out and getting a Devonta Freeman or a Lamar Miller before the offseason's over. And that very well may happen. But I think if he does hold out this roster spot, he's the RB1 when the season starts. I'm not scared of Justin Jackson. The only other guy that I'm kind of concerned about is Joshua Kelly, which we can spend some time on if you want. But I think the biggest thing about Austin Eckler is that he has an extremely high ceiling when it comes to efficiency. He had 1.29 fantasy points per opportunity. Like I said, Kenyan Drake, Miles Sanders both had 0.9 last year. So that's very high. He's going to regress a little bit in terms of efficiency. It's just going to happen. But I think if he regresses, it's going to be like 1 fantasy point per opportunity. If the guy touches the ball 300 times, he might have 300 fantasy points and he might finish as a top 6 running back. So I think the value is there for him. And I think the only concern for me is his efficiency running the football. I think he could get opportunity running the football taken away from him. But I think the biggest thing for Austin Eckler is his floor with his, pass catching. Is that regardless of what happens with Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson and how they're involved in the offense and how many opportunities he gets rushing the football, Austin Eckler still has a good floor. So it's like if you draft him, he's still a solid flex.
That's kind of why I'm putting him on this list. He's probably one of the last guys on this list for me, but he is on the list. My only concern with Austin Eckler, and if everything goes right with him, he's somebody who could very well have an insane year. I mean, if he catches 92 passes again,
absurd, which I think is very possible. It also could be because of
wide receiver
Phillip Rivers. But
so that's what I was going to say. Phillip Rivers, especially in his later years, would check down all the time. Like that was almost his first read, was a check down. Like he loves throwing to running backs, screen plays, check downs, like anything that wheel route, anything that gets the ball to the running back, he would do it. Whether it was Melvin Gordon or Austin Eckler. They would use Austin Eckler more in passing down, so he would get more catches. With Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback, I don't see that happening.
What about Justin Herbert? You like him?
I like Herbert more for Eckler than I do Tyrod Taylor for Eckler. Even though I probably would like Tyrod Taylor more as a fantasy option than Justin Herbert in year 1.
Yeah.
But I think that should be a concern, is how Austin Eckler is going to get used in that offense this year when it comes to catching the football, because I don't think he's going to get 92 catches. I don't think he's going to get 80 catches.
Why do you not think he's going to get 92 catches? Just because Phillip Rivers is gone?
I think Phillip Rivers is gone.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair estimation. Yeah. I think he could fall in the same, just because, younger, not that Tyrod Taylor is a younger quarterback, but quarterbacks who struggle throwing down the field tend to dump off to their running backs a lot more. And I don't think Tyrod Taylor, at this point in his career where he has basically, if he fails with the Chargers, he's done. Like as a starter, he's not going to start in the NFL again. So I think for me, Tyrod Taylor is probably going to play it safe a lot, and that might lead to him dumping it off to Austin Eckler a little bit more. But I could see a statistical decrease in that category. That is my biggest concern with Austin Eckler is like, how bad is this offense going to be?
Yeah, I don't know. They have some weapons, but
Like, can they be in the red zone enough for Austin Eckler to get opportunities to score? Because prorated on those 4 games he started the season with, the kid finishes with 24 total touchdowns, all purpose. So, like, that's crazy. He's not going to hit that. Yeah. He's just not going to do it. I could see him getting 12 to 15 all-purpose touchdowns next year, but if that opportunity is not there to score, then he's seriously capped. But I think right now his ADP is 36, so he's a 4th-round pick.
I think that's perfect, though. Like, I'm definitely taking
if he goes any higher than that, I'm concerned.
So, do you want to hear where Fantasy Pros has him?
Where?
The 21st ranked player.
Okay.
And he's the 12th running back, so he's ahead of Miles Sanders.
Yeah. I just think he's perfect in terms of floor, because even if he doesn't catch 90 balls again, he might catch like 70. And in PPR, that's 70 fantasy points that you can stack on your team. In standard, that's 35 fantasy points that you can add to the total. So, I mean, in half PPR, that's 35 fantasy points you can add to the total. So, for me, it's like, I think the floor is there when it comes to Austin Eckler, enough that if he doesn't end up being what we think he can be, which is that RB1 type player, right? If he doesn't reach that, he's still a solid flex, and you're not disappointed that you drafted him in the 4th round. It's kind of like a safe pick that has upside. And you don't usually get those in fantasy. So for me, it's like, I'm willing to stake, that 4th round pick on him. Now, if he ends up jolting into the 3rd round, 2nd round, I'm done. I want him on my team, but I don't want to waste that high of a draft value not knowing what it's going to be. But I think at this point you can agree that he's a must-own running back for 2020.
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. And especially if he's going in the 4th round, I think that's you got to get him there.
So let's talk about another polarizing character in the fantasy football community outside of Miles Sanders. It's a one Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yep.
We've talked about Edwards-Helaire in this program.
We have.
I'm going to give a quick rundown. I wrote some notes on Clyde, before this show started. Very short list, 5 bullet points, 6 bullet points. So I'm going to read them off real fast. And these are reasons why Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be on your fantasy team and why he'll be at least a top 15 running back in 2020. He's on the Chiefs offense.
Yep. That's a good start.
He's on the Chiefs offense.
Yep.
He's on the Chiefs offense, and he's on the Chiefs offense.
Oh,
so,
right.
He also has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback.
Oh, I got to write that one down.
And Andy Reid as his coach, who happened to be like the best offense in football. So
Andy Reid loves quick running backs.
Yeah.
Fits
perfectly.
Isn't Carlos Edwards-Helaire a quick running back?
Yeah. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Sorry. Don't mess up my boy's name. Don't do that.
I don't know. Did I mess up his name? I said Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
So he's a great fit for the offense.
Yep.
Andy Reid, Mahomes love him.
Plays on the Chiefs. Yep.
His ADP is uncertain right now because right now he's supposed to be a 10th round pick. And yes, please. If that's what it is, I'm all in. But I think he's going to be a 5th round pick, and when it's all said and done.
Sure. Fantasy Pros has him ranked 24th overall, and they have Eckler as the RB12.
Where's Damian Williams on their list?
Oh gosh, nowhere.
Okay, good.
Yeah, non-existent.
I think he's going to win the job. So that's one of my bullet points. And there you go. There you have it. 6 of them were he's on the Chiefs offense.
Also, he was the best pass-catching back in the draft.
Yeah, right.
And he's on the Chiefs offense.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't he's one of these guys that might not get a lot of carries.
Right.
And he wouldn't need it because he might have a similar season to Austin Eckler did last year, where I'm not going to say he's going to catch the ball 90 plus times, but
no, just kidding. I'm not projecting.
He's going to get used in the passing game a lot.
A lot of fantasy football analysts that I trust in the community are putting him right around that 15 to 17 range in projections, which I think is safe.
Among running backs?
Yeah, I think that's a safe area to him.
Sure, yeah.
If you're projecting him out, but I think he's a mid-range RB2 with the upside to be an RB1. I don't think he's like a Kareem Hunt. He can be. he looks like Kareem Hunt in the workout metrics category. Like if you go to player profile and you type in Kareem Hunt and then you type in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they got like the same metrics. So I'm like,
he's like a shorter Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt was like he had like this explosive ability. And I'm like, when I first watched Clyde Edwards-Helaire on film, I'm like, well, I don't, like he has a 4.5 40, like he doesn't really look that fast. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what exactly is there? And then, I started watching on film. I'm like, okay, the speed is there. But I'm like, he's not really going to be, kind of reminds me of David Montgomery. He's not going to be this guy that can get a 60-yard gash down the field. But then it's like, well, Kareem Hunt could do it, and he had the same metrics. So maybe in the Chiefs offense, they're that good that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do that. But the Chiefs offense, man, that's the biggest one that kind of rides up my pants. I love it. But he's going to be on every single one of my fantasy teams, and I'm going to go down burning with that ship. I will.
Me too.
The biggest. Let's talk about the biggest concern for Clyde, and then we'll move on to the last guy. Okay. It's most definitely Damian Williams at this point.
Yeah. It's absolutely Damian
Williams. And the GM, we talked about this last week. The GM said that they're going to split, and we'll leave that up to Andy Reid because he's the coach. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a first-round pick, so I don't know that Damian Williams is going to, undrafted free agent is going to come in and steal the job away from a first-round pick. I think Damian Williams is there. I think that if he, because I've talked about my prediction. This might be in the bold prediction show, so maybe not. It won't even be a bold prediction by the time we get there. But I think Damian Williams is going to be cut. I really do. And I think he's got a place in the NFL, and he's got a team where he can go, and there are going to be teams that are going to look for him. They're going to love him, and
he deserves to be on an NFL.
Yeah,
roster,
for sure. I just think that Darwin Thompson, the guy they drafted last year, Darrell Williams. They have another Williams running back too. I think they got 3 of them, but I think they got enough in that backfield right now that they don't need a $3 million dead weight. You know what I mean? Like they just don't need it right now. Like it's just, he's the same kind of running back as Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So why waste? Like why have 2 spots for that?
I understand your line of thinking, and I agree with you overall that it doesn't make sense because they have Clyde now, but I don't think they're going to cut him.
Yeah.
I think he's too good of a player, unless he was making a bigger contract.
Got to get more comfortable for this show, Rick.
Dude,
sorry.
Just see, wait, one day we'll have a couch.
Yeah, that's true. Continue.
So I don't think they're going to cut him, but I do see why you would think that because it's kind of like they're the same player, really. Yeah.
So that would be my bold prediction, but I think even if Damian Williams is there, let's assume he is because he is still on the team. I think there's a place for Damian Williams in that offense. So there is a reasonable possibility that Clyde could start the season. I'm just going to call him Clyde because Edwards-Helaire is a mouthful.
That's what I'm starting to do, yeah.
So Clyde, I think he's going to have an early season opportunity. I think in the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, you could see a even split between Damian Williams. But as Clyde Edwards-Helaire starts separating himself and showing, like it could take 1 week, it could take 5 weeks, but he will start separating himself as the RB1. Damian Williams, it might even start before the season starts, but he will separate himself from Damian Williams. He will be the RB1. He will get the full workload, the Kareem Hunt workload that we wanted from Damian Williams, and he'll be that guy. So I don't have any concerns there. I want Clyde Edwards-Helaire on my team for whenever that moment when he takes over the job fully happens. Because as soon as that happens, I will say it, you got probably an RB1 on your fantasy team. And what is he going to be, a fifth round pick? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I got to take it.
If he's a 5th round pick, yeah, you absolutely have to take it there.
Yeah.
And even if they split, like even if that report is true and it wasn't even a report. Who was the guy that said that?
It was the GM of the Chiefs.
So even if they do that and they do split carries, like I think Clyde will still be very valuable just because of his passing game.
Yeah.
Or his ability to catch the ball in the backfield.
Agreed. Let's move on to the last guy, TG 13. But his number's not 13, so it doesn't make any sense. Todd Gurley.
I don't know what his number is.
Todd Gurley. I honestly don't know what his number is either, to be frank.
I'm looking that up because now
now you're curious.
Yeah.
So Todd Gurley, when the season starts, my great friend almost won me a fantasy championship, and just staring at his picture on Player Profiler, wondering what could have been.
Your lover.
I love Todd Gurley. I've always loved Todd Gurley. He's 25 years old. When the season starts, he's going to be 26.
Which isn't that like?
Which is not that old. What is that? His 5th year in the league?
Yeah, he does have more work under him than a guy like Kenyan Drake, and he's had more injuries. So he's an older 26. But he's still 26.
Yeah. So he
will be 26.
He's generally young.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think he's got 2 more years left under him, and then I think he'll probably go the way of the dodo, like Adrian Peterson. His ADP right now is, I believe, in Sleeper, the 9th round, which I don't think will hold there. I think he'll end up being like a 4th round pick.
Yeah, he's right now, he's a projected like 4th round pick on a Fantasy Pros.
Yeah, so I think he'll definitely be that 4th round pick. But big situations here for Todd Gurley. Now, there's, other than Idaho Smith, there's no one on the Atlanta Falcons who are going to steal work from Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
Agreed?
No, absolutely. I mean, Todd Gurley is going to be the workhorse in Atlanta.
I'm not worried about that. Not worried about workload at all. Last year on the Los Angeles Rams, he had 273 touches. I'm sorry, 256 touches.
Jeez.
Well, I got that wrong again. It's
the
254 touches.
With Todd Gurley is Devonta Freeman was in the same spot last year. He was a 3rd round pick.
Yep.
People were like, he's healthy finally. He's going to be the workhorse.
Yep.
And he had his opportunity, and he just wasn't that good when he played,
He just sucked.
I don't know if it was his fault.
Let's just bring in another old man.
If it was the offensive line or what happened there, but he wasn't productive.
Todd Gurley's knees are close to my grandfather's.
Is it going to be different with Todd Gurley? Or is it just going to be the same thing that happened with Devonta Freeman last year? I think it'll be different because, I think that team is I think they're going to be healthier. The offensive line is slightly improved.
Yeah.
And 2, I think Todd Gurley is better than Devonta Freeman at this point in their careers.
Yeah.
I mean, Devonta Freeman is a little older.
Yep.
And I think even when they were both in their prime, Todd Gurley was the better player. So
Todd Gurley was absurdly good in 2018 and 2017, where he finished as the RB1 in consecutive seasons. Mm-hmm. He had in 2018, he had 300 plus touches, 21 touchdowns, and 1,800 all-purpose yards. So he was absolutely insane in that season. And then the following year, they took a lot of work away from him. Yep. He only had around 1,100 all-purpose yards, 14 all-purpose touchdowns, and 31 receptions. So he had a massive drop-off in the reception category. The biggest problem with Todd Gurley from 2018 to 2019 was efficiency. He had 4.7 yards a carry in 2018. In 2019, he had 3.8 yards per carry.
Yeah.
So he took a hit there. And his fantasy point per opportunity, 0.8. In 2018, it was 1.09. So there was some massive differences between Todd Gurley of 2018 and Todd Gurley of 2019. You can't tell me those massive differences were because of his knee. Those massive differences were because the Rams were good one year and sucked the next.
That definitely played, I think, a bigger factor than knee, because I think people will just look at it and say, oh, his knees are gone. I don't think they're the same, obviously, as when he came into the league. But like if you watch, I mean, I had Todd Gurley on my fantasy team for a little bit last year. And sure, there was times where you looked at Todd Gurley, like there'd be a carry or two, and you're like, yeah, that was not Todd Gurley. But then there'd be other times where you'd be like, okay, there's Todd Gurley. There he is. Yeah, there he is. He just a quick burst up the middle, and I pick up a 20 yards, and then boom, he's out of the game, and here comes Malcolm Brown. And it's like, this isn't what they've been doing the last few years. So if he plays like that in Atlanta, I don't think he's going to be Todd Gurley from 2018 or 2017.
Yeah.
But he's going to be for sure worth a 4th round pick.
So here's, you want to hear what I think is the biggest difference between Todd Gurley 2018 and Todd Gurley 2019. Not the kneecap, not the age, not the, increased workloads over the years, taking a toll on him to the point where he just wasn't the same guy. It wasn't the slight decrease in workload that he had from 2018 and 2019, which affected how many fantasy points he had. Yes. In 2018, according to Player Profiler, the Rams had a run blocking efficiency of 89.2, which was number 12 in all of the league. So they were a top 12 offensive line run blocking team.
This is 2018?
This is 2018. In 2019, they were 49th ranked. I don't even know how that's a thing. It's 32 teams in the NFL.
What?
62.9. That might be based on running backs and how efficient they were in front.
Yeah, that's probably.
So he had a 62.9. So that's a difference of 37 points. And so for me, it's or 37 ranks, I should say. For me, that is the big difference. That offensive line got worse. That offense as a whole got worse, and it affected Todd Gurley. He's going into what I would say is a slightly better offense than the Rams have. Would you disagree with that?
I think it's debatable, but last year, the Falcons were a better offense probably.
Okay. So the only thing we can really reference is the Atlanta Falcons running back Devonta Freeman, who played 14 games last year. We can reference his numbers because he was the closest thing that we're going to get to what Todd Gurley is. Mm-hmm. So their run blocking efficiency in the same ballpark, 59.4, number 54 overall. So it sucks. And you also have, issues with the yards per carry, which is 3.5. I think I talked about this before the season. The offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, his name is, hold on, let me look it up. I totally forgot it already.
Oh gosh, why am I blanking on the head coach of the
Dirk
Atlanta
Cutter.
Falcons?
So I looked up Dirk Cutter's facts.
Dan Quinn.
It's Dan Quinn. But I looked up Dirk Cutter in his offensive numbers last year. And the one thing that I noticed is that he was bottom of the league in every single season, with the exception of one that he's coached in his entire career in rushing. Bottom of the league. His running backs always are terrible efficiency-wise on the ground. Always. That's why I was hesitant on the Devonta Freeman hype last year, and I liked him, but I was like, I don't know, guys. This whole situation with the offensive coordinator is really disconcerting. And so I think when you have a more talented running back, I think 4 yards a carry is safe to project for Todd Gurley, but I don't think he's going to walk in and make the Atlanta Falcons rushing game any better. I think the big separation between Todd Gurley and Devonta Freeman is that I think Todd Gurley, we talked about how he's more talented, but I think he's just a better pass catcher. And Devonta Freeman last year had 70 targets. So I think if you go into this season and Todd Gurley catches 60 receptions, he does great work through the air. I think he gets, 60, 70 receptions, and he can get 600-700 yards on the ground. Through the air. And then if he hits 1,000, he could very well have a season where he gets himself back into that RB1 play. The question is, obviously, for him, efficiency-wise, he's never been a guy that gets a whole ton of rushing yards, a whole ton of receiving yards. Usually around 1,600 to 1,800 throughout his entire career, a season. It's the touchdowns, and I think if he can get back up to 17, 18 touchdowns, it'll be great for him. But I don't know if that's possible. I like Todd Gurley because of the round that he's going in. And the value that he brings. If he ends up being a 5th, 6th round pick, great value. You can snag him, and then if he somehow miraculously goes back to Todd Gurley of 2018 and becomes that top 3 running back, you got a steal in that round. But you're not risking a lot fantasy-wise drafting him in the 5th or 6th round because he ends up being, basically on your bench or your flex.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if Todd Gurley goes any sooner, if like any sooner than like the 4th round, like if he's a 3rd round pick or higher,
I'm a little bit nervous about
it. I become more nervous about it too. But I mean, as of right now, he's a really late round pick on sleeper. I think he'll probably, like you said, 4th round pick. You think he'll end up being?
Yeah.
I think he'll probably be like a 4th, 5th round pick, and if that's the case, I think I would definitely take him.
Yeah.
Atlanta didn't do too much to bolster their offensive line, but they did draft the center in the 3rd round, who could be the starting center, and like that's an upgrade there.
Right.
And then they added a few depth moves, like a guard or two, which will help running backs. And
I just hope Dirk Cutter doesn't ruin.
Yeah,
what I want Todd Gurley.
I think you made
a
good point with the catching the football. I think Todd Gurley is better at catching the football than Devonta Freeman. And Devonta Freeman, you said, had like 70-something targets?
Yes.
Yeah, so you give that to Gurley, I think he'll do good with it.
Yeah, I agree. It should be interesting to see what Todd Gurley does. The other guy on this list that we wanted to bring in, we're not going to talk about on the show, but Melvin Gordon, I think, is a guy that is one of those must-own running backs going into the season. But I think these older guys, not older, but guys that were top 5 fantasy picks, just a year ago, are now, falling into they're on new teams, they're in new situations, and we're going to have to see. I'm concerned about the Dirk Cutter rushing effect, is he actually going to be that bad, on the ground? I don't know. But if he can get up to 600 to 800 receiving yards and reach 1,000 rushing yards on the season, I mean, he's back to where he was efficiency-wise rushing the football. And if he just gets past 15 touchdowns, the guy's already a top 5 running back.
Yep.
So it's like, I think he's a solid RB2, between 12 to 16, I would say, when the season's all said and done. But he can be, a top 5, top 6, top 7 running back if he gets back to what he was doing with the Los Angeles Rams a couple years ago.
That's the thing with Gurley. Like, as long as he stays healthy, at worst, he's not going to be worse than like the 16th, 17th running back.
Right.
Like, his floor is pretty high.
Yeah.
So I think he's definitely worth the draft pick.
Interesting on the Todd Gurley discussion, but that'll do it for our must-own, must-draft running backs for 2020. We might do another version of the show later in the year. We'll see what happens, but these are guys that we think you should own. You should go out and draft. You should go try to get them on your fantasy team. Great value picks here, and I think you could have some awesome fantasy production in 2020 from these 5. Was it 5 we talked about running backs? So that'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and we'll talk to you on Thursday, Fantasy Champs. Have a great week.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at @TheFFChamps.